Hi guys!
Hello!
And welcome back. We're really excited because today we're going to be reviewing adaptations. We already did this in our blubber video when we went over the Arctic, and today we're going to talk all about the desert and what animals need in order to survive that really dry climate. We have an experiment and a few activities that you can do at home, but first we're going to start with our vocabulary. So Danielle's going to share with us a screen right now that has our vocab, and if you'd like to follow along and maybe write some notes of your own, feel free to do that. These are words that we're going to need to know in order to understand what's going on in our experiment.
And also, I have glasses not because of anything, not because of my seeing or anything. It's because, see, I've been staring on screens a lot because I have to go on Google Classroom to do all my work, and I have to do these videos, and my eyes have started hurting. So I got blue light glasses to make sure that my eyes don't hurt when I stare at screens.
Nice. Yeah, I'm glad you shared that with us. Maybe some of our viewers might need the glasses too if their eyes are starting to hurt.
Maybe. Yeah, I should probably invest in those as well. All right, so let's go over our vocabulary for today. The first word we have is going to be a review word. This is adaptation. An adaptation is any behavioral or physical characteristic of any animal to help it survive in its environment. These characteristics fall into three main categories, and those categories are body parts, body coverings, and behaviors.
Our second word is deserts. Deserts are habitats that have no more than 20 inches of precipitation per year and can be hot or cold. The four types of deserts are hot and dry, semi-arid, coastal, and cold. It's actually a misbelief that all deserts are hot, because deserts can be really cold, sometimes colder than some places that aren't deserts. Desert plants and animals are able to live with very little water as well.
True.
I was muted. Great. Our next vocabulary word is conserve. To conserve is to save something, like money or your energy on a long run. I bet you can guess what animals in the desert have to conserve. Water!
Water, absolutely. So the last word is nocturnal, and before I get into this definition, it is actually a behavioral adaptation. So Danielle mentioned that there are three different ways that animals adapt. This one is a behavioral adaptation because these animals have changed their behavior out of the normal in order to conserve more water. So nocturnal animals are animals that reserve activity for the night and they sleep during the day. So that's obviously important in the desert because it's either so hot outside or so dry, they can't survive during the day, right? So they choose to expend their energy at nighttime instead. Yes. So there are a lot of different types of habitats, but like I mentioned, today we're concentrating on the desert. We're going to play a very similar game, exactly the same as we did with our blubber, but today we're going to focus on the word desert, okay? So if you're going to play along with us, which you can at home, we're going to give you 1 minute to tell us every single word you can think of about the word desert. That can be animals that live there, characteristics of the habitat, or whatever you think of when you associate what you associate with the word desert. Okay, so our contestants should have a piece of paper and a pencil in front of them. Are we ready?
Ready.
All right, let's see who can get the most words. Get set, go.
This is way harder than the last one. I can't really think of any words.
I love the music. It makes me nervous. Yeah, this one is a lot harder, I feel like.
Yeah, desert's a tricky one. It's funny because we live in the desert.
Right? Should be easier.
All right, stop, please. Pencils down, hands up.
Actually, I'm just going to count it and put my number down.
Yep, go ahead and count it, put your number down, and then show me your lists. We're going to start with Karosh today. If he could list off some of the words he put. How many did you get?
11 words. Ooh.
Nice.
Oh, I got 11 words. My
Nice.
first word was dry, then cold, hot, heat, sun, sand, cactus, cacti, lizard, burn, and rocks.
Nice.
That's a good list. Let's see. Mandana, how many did you get?
I got 10 words.
Ooh, could you read your list?
So I got dry, hot, warm, elephants, dead trees, less water.
Elephant. Whoa. Elephant?
Yes, like in the African deserts. Yep.
Elephants, dead trees, less water, rocky, sandy, cold, and cactus.
Very nice, Mandana. Very good list. Danielle, what'd you get?
I got hot, cold, dry, lizard, sand, desert rat, cactus, sun, heat, lack of water, conserve, Arizona, Sonoran, Sahara, and Mexico. So I got
count right. Was that 18?
15.
Oh, you said it so fast. I was trying to count with you. So you're our winner today. Very good. Very, very good. Nice job. So awesome. One word that you guys all came up with was the word dry. That's absolutely right. Again, Karosh went over this, but deserts have no more than 20 inches of rain in an entire year. Arizona, where we live, is actually a desert because we get about 9 inches of rain a year, and we even have monsoon season, right? So what are some other deserts you know of, Karosh?
You're muted.
I know a few. Some are the Sahara Desert, Gobi Desert, Antarctican Desert in Antarctica, shocker, and the Sonoran Desert in USA and Mexico.
Great. So although we know a desert can be cold or hot, we most often associate a desert with high temperatures. Today we're going to learn about some animals and their adaptations that help them live in hot deserts. Since it is so hot, it's even harder for animals to conserve water in order to survive. That's what our experiment is all about today.
I already know a plant that has to conserve water in the desert. It's a cactus. We see them everywhere in Arizona. It's one of the most common plants that you can find in Arizona as well.
Yep. Primarily, cactuses store water in collapsible water storage cells found in the stem. However, some cactuses also store water in their big roots that are modified to perform this function. The collapsible water storage cells appear as holes or spaces in the stem and retain water for a fairly long time. But what about the animals that have to conserve water? I know every living thing needs water, so how do they survive with so little of it?
It's a really good question. So that's exactly what our experiment today aims to answer. Today we will talk about 3 ways that animals in the desert conserve water in order to survive. Lawdan knows those ways. Could you share them with us?
Sure. The 3 main ways that animals use to conserve water are live in shaded areas or are nocturnal, burrow or dig to hide from the intense heat, protect their water through thick skin body coverings, so like the blubber that we talked about in our other video.
Yep. So you're very right. And Danielle's going to share with us a screen share real quick. So I'd like to just go over a little bit of what our experiment is going to look like. So Karosh, can you tell us first the different methods of placement of our sponges? We each had a sponge, and we did something different with each of our sponges because our sponges represent different animals in the desert. Karosh, can you tell us what each of our sponges represented?
You're muted.
Share our next screen. Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, I was saying what I was saying, and then I saw a notification come up, and it's like, if you are talking, you are currently muted. And I'm like, oh man. But Mandy sponge represents an animal who lives in shaded areas or nocturnal animals to conserve water. So yeah, Mandy's sponge is just going to be a sponge laid out in the shade and see how much water it retains. Mandana's sponge represents a burrowing animal. So she's going to dig a hole, and then she's going to take her wet sponge, put it in that hole, put the dirt back up, to put the dirt on top of the sponge and see if the sponge still has water in the morning. My sponge represents thick-skinned animals. So I'm just going to take my sponge, get it with a bunch of water, put it in a Ziploc bag, so that's the thick skin, and leave it out in the sun and see if it still has any water. And Danielle's sponge is just the animals that are going to die in the desert. Danielle's sponge represents other creatures who don't naturally live in the desert. She's going to take her sponge, fill it with water, and just put it out in the sunlight and see if it still has water in the morning, which obviously it won't.
You never know. Could survive. But what are your predictions on which adaptations are the best for conserving the most water?
Make a guess.
I'm not going to guess because I've done this before.
I have a guess. I think, Karosh, you will be the winner on this one with your protective layer of covering for the Ziploc.
I have a guess.
I'm going to go with underdog. I'm going with Danielle.
At first I thought mine was going to work, but then I thought about it some more, and I think my brother's, Karosh, is going to work.
All right, so let's see. I've actually got something written up here. We'll talk about it here in a minute. If you can't read it, that's all right. That's where we're going to record our results. But we actually placed our sponges yesterday. So I placed mine in the shade. Madonna placed hers in the sand. Karosh sealed his in a bag. And Danielle simply just put hers in direct sunlight, right? After we filled it with water. So we want to see which animal conserved the most water. And this part of the experiment, you need a measuring cup or something to measure. I think Karosh might be using a syringe. If you,
I'm just going to use a measuring cup.
Perfect. You can use a syringe as well if that's what you want to use to measure. We left ours out almost a full, 22 hours, I want to say, something like that. Yeah. And I would suggest, because a lot of our sponges ended up being quite dry, I would suggest maybe only letting them sit for 4 to 6 hours when the sun is out. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start, and this is what we're gonna do. Remember that mine was in the shade, so mine represents animals that when they need protection from the sun, they go find shade, or they are nocturnal animals. So I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze it into here and see how much water it conserved after our—
Right now, you're yellow.
So I'm trying to get it—
Whoa.
Wow, you've actually got a lot of water.
More than I thought, guys. Oh, I'm squeezing it. Okay. All right. Wow.
That was more than I thought, honestly.
Honestly, me too.
Same.
So, can you guys see the board okay?
Yep.
All right. So I'm sponge 1. My shaded and nocturnal animals look like they got about just a little bit over a tablespoon, which means we're going to do everything in ounces. I have the conversion over here, but 1 tablespoon is 0.5 ounces. If I had to make an estimate based on where it is on the line, I would say 0.6 ounces.
Do you have conversion for milliliters? Because that's the only thing mine measures in.
Yeah, well, we can sort it out. We'll figure it out. We'll use our mathematical brains as well. All right, sponge number 2 is the burrower, which is Mandana.
The dirty sponge.
So here's my disgusting sponge that I dug up. I have this. I honestly think it's not going to get there at all. Okay. I'm going to put the plate under it because I've got a feeling that a lot of dirt is going to fall. Not water, dirt. It literally just dirt. It's no water's coming out. It's just dirt falling.
That's kind of
I got
interesting
no
in
water
and of
out of
itself,
it.
though.
I didn't even get a drop of water. Okay, look at my plate. It's like
Just
filled
dirt.
with dirt.
Honestly, it's not all 4 of us in a fair competition. Really, it's just who's gonna have more water, Manana or Danielle.
I got no water.
I'm going to say because she has dirt, she probably has more water than I do.
No, the only thing that's falling out of the sponge is dirt.
It's dirt.
It's like cold from the water, but like it's not like it has zero water. No water's falling into this cup except dirt.
Okay,
So I'm gonna go now. What's it called? I'm pretty sure I'm gonna win. Literally, you can see how much
hold on 1 minute.
water.
Okay, so Mandana, you had something to share with us. Why do you think that it was just dirt and there wasn't very much water in your sponge? What happened with our experiment?
So it's because the sand that we had outside was pretty dry, and if you put it in dry sand, of course the water's gonna dry out. It's gonna make the sand wet because the sand is going to absorb the water into itself to make the sand like wet sand. So I bet you if I put the sponge in now with water in it, the sand is, if it's still wet right now, I bet you it would have water in it because the sand is moist. But right now, the sand that I put it in before was not moist enough, so the water just got sucked up by the sand.
Very good explanation of that. So Mandana, so that we can record, I put 0.6 ounces for mine. How many ounces would you say of water you were able to get?
0.
Okay.
0 ounces.
Mandana just
Unless you count dirt, I got 1 ounce of dirt, I guess.
So
And that's a really interesting point that she made too, because that could be an experiment all on its own, right? You could take the sponge and you could pre-wet water, not to where you turn it into mud or anything, but at least to where the ground is wet versus a dry desert ground where the water would be absorbed into the sand. And it also makes Kurosha's point and Desert Animals' point even better as to what adaptations those animals might have to survive.
true. All right, Kurosh, now it's your turn.
What's it called? Mine is in this baggie. I think I have an unfair advantage. Like if I literally turn it on the side, you can see how much water is collected overnight, and that's just out of the sponge. So I'm just more worried about overflowing water instead of not getting any water. So I'm gonna take my sponge out. Oh, and I'm gonna squeeze it into the cup and try not to spill. Slowly.
And his are in milliliters, and there's about 29.5 milliliters in every fluid ounce. So we'll have to do some math.
Gonna wring it out. There's still more water.
Can you show us, Kurosh, what it looks like as you're squeezing?
I've literally spun it. So yeah, I'm just going to put the sponge right on the floor.
I'm going to go wash.
Okay, now I'll see how much I got. I think that's about 75, 80 milliliters.
Wow.
75 or 80 milliliters. So what's about 80 milliliters divided by about 29?
Echo. What is 80 divided by 29?
Come on.
I can't hear it.
Okay, so let's just, what do you guys think it's going to be? I'll get the exact.
Should I drink it?
No, do not drink that water.
So you said 80, right? Divided by 29. So about 2.8, I'm rounding up, 2.8 ounces in his. Wow, that's a lot more than us.
That is a lot.
I still think Danielle's going to win, the underdog who literally just left hers out in the sun.
Yeah.
All right,
Are you
underdog.
guys ready for this?
Yep.
All right. Mine represents what might happen if an animal is not protected from the sun and doesn't have any adaptations to help it survive in the desert. This is dry. It is like no longer wet. It's kind of crunchy. It has lost a lot of its original spongy volume. It basically maintains shape of what you put it in. This is very hard and crunchy. Also, yeah, I could wring this out, but there's no water in it.
No, ring it. Let's see.
Less.
Get my measuring cup.
I love it. So I put 0.
The table too wet.
Even maintains its shape. That's how
Right.
dry it is.
Kind of looks like a DNA.
I
Oh,
washed a sponge.
oh my
All
God.
right.
It's clean now. Clean sponge.
You cleaned it off?
Yes.
All right, so just a recap of our experiment. Mine that represented animals that are in the shade or are nocturnal had 0.6 ounces. Those that burrow had 0. We talked about what went wrong in our experiment for that to happen. Our thick skin Karosh that had his in a Ziploc, it had 2.8 ounces and was the clear winner. Nice job, Karosh. And then our sponge number 4 would not survive in the desert.
And that's 2 point, how many ounces?
2.8 ounces.
2.8 ounces, and I spilled a bunch.
Yeah, and that was an estimate, right? All of our numbers were very rough. Just keep that in mind. Our experiment, there were a lot of things that we didn't control for. Because we're remote, we all tried to find pretty similar sponges, but if you're doing this at home and you want to have a little bit more of a controlled experiment, I would use the exact same sponges and I would use the exact same amount of water in each sponge. We did the best we could remotely to mimic this. So, all right, couple questions that I'm going to have for you guys, but before we jump into that, I wanted to talk about specific animals that I know that represent each sponge. So mine was the sponge that is in shade or are nocturnal animals, and those include nocturnal animals like coyotes, skunks, bobcats, tarantulas, scorpions, and centipedes. I mentioned this earlier, but a lot of animals in the desert have more than one adaptation. So you'll notice that some of the animals that are listed fit in more than one category. So they might burrow, but they might also have protective skin layer to help them conserve water and survive. Mondana's was sponge number 2, which were the burrowing animals. Those are like rodents, desert rats, which is a real thing, toads, desert tortoises, and kit foxes. So those are some animals that burrow. Karosh, he had the ones that had the thick layer of skin or some type of body covering to help them conserve water. Animals like that, wow, are scorpions.
I think I didn't even get all the water because it's still really wet. Oh yeah, I didn't even get it all. There's a lot.
Oh my goodness. Wolf spiders and horned frogs that have thick outer covering, which reduces moisture loss, right? So that really protects their skin. So a couple questions for you guys, and this is just going to be a little conversation about our experiment. But I want to ask you, number 1, if you were to be a desert animal, what would you want your adaptation to be and why? Mondana, you can start.
Well, of course, as you can see what happened to mine, all the water would get sucked out of me. So I don't want that. I would want my brother's, because if I had mine, I surely wouldn't survive. If I had my brother's, I think I would.
Okay, so let's ask this before everyone else shares. Mondana, let's say that you were an animal that could burrow in a moist area, or maybe an area that's near the small amount of water that exists in the desert. Would you rather that?
Yes, maybe. It depends. I haven't tried it out.
All right. Yeah, so those that burrow in moist water, those are a little bit better to conserve water because it's not escaping to the driest part of the sand, right? So it'd be a little bit more efficient in having that adaptation actually work for you, right? Karosh, I think I heard you say that you'd rather have the thick skin. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Also, I was wrong. It wasn't 80 milliliters. With the extra squeeze, it's 100 milliliters.
Oh, okay. So that would be over 3 ounces.
Yep, definitely thick-skinned.
Yeah.
He's the winner.
You know what I wouldn't pick? Laying out in the sun to try to get a suntan
I think
without any protection.
I think he still has the underdog opportunity.
I would not pick that. I would definitely go with a skin covering as well. And if I could have a dual one, I would probably go with burrowing and having the skin.
Yep.
So.
Nice. I like that. Mondana, do you have something to add?
Yes. It got sand all over my phone.
Oh no! Be sure to keep your phones away during.
You see, I put it like right in front of the computer, and then I had the plate here, thinking that it would all get on the plate. It got all over my phone.
Oh my goodness.
And the table.
All right, guys, so let's talk about a couple of the variables of this experiment. So Mandy mentioned that we all have probably slightly different sponges. We could have potentially put different amounts of water in our sponges. These things are all going to be variables of our experiment that, because we're remote, we can't control them. But if you're doing this at home, go ahead and do that for yourself. Again, she also said that the difference in how we ran our experiment, which you might want to implement, would be to do this between 4 to 6 hours during the day, which is perfect for a school day. Take it out there, go out, observe what's happening with them, but be careful not to squeeze them or touch them, otherwise they might lose that extra water. And yeah, you could even try the extra experiment of making that sand or dirt wet before you put your sponge in, as well as having one that's dry, because that will also make a difference.
Love it. Yes, I'm really glad you went over that, because there are a lot of reasons why our experiment would look a little bit different if we were, all together, or we had perfectly controlled for everything, which we didn't, right? A quick thing, because I know that we're just about to run out of time, but if you are a desert animal, there's a ton of other adaptations besides just conserving water. I'm going to link some of those below, but one of them is having quick feet. There's a video of a sandwinder snake that is very fast and quick. Also, lizards are fast and quick, and that helps them survive the heat as well. Because if you think about placing your hand on a hot sidewalk, it'll burn. But if you go like this and pitter patter, then it's not going to be as bad, right? So we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Does anybody have anything really quick to add? Because we have about 30 seconds.
All I have to add is we gotta leave.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.